So far we've talked about theme, we've talked about character, and now we're going to get into some real scene work. First things first, we're going to get into some table work. So when I say table work, what does that mean?
I mean, there's no table here, which is really misleading.
What's happening?
But yeah, like when I've been in a rehearsal, table work is the moment when we all get together and we read through the script together to get a grasp on what is happening and who is saying what and what it could sound like.
So when you are an actor coming into table work, do you already have all the answers and know exactly what you're going to do and know exactly what everything means?
Hard no. And in fact, if you have a question, this is the moment when you're like, great, I have a question, let's talk about it.
Right. And I think that's important to note that when we're going through this, and we've been doing theater our entire lives, we still come to pieces with questions. And it's part of that process of discovery and questioning and getting into the material that's the fun of it, right? And that we shouldn't be expected to have all the answers right off the bat.
And if we do have answers, making sure they align with what the overall creative vision of the show is.
Beautiful.
Because you might have the same show done in New Jersey. It's going to be a different show in Idaho.
Yes, that's right.
Same story though, but it's going to be depending on the people in the room.
Right.
And how we answer those questions together as a team.
Yeah, and I think it's that collaborative spirit that really separates something like visual art or something like that, which is usually done as a solo act, to the art of theater. That collaborative essence is part of what makes it unique. And so we talked about getting into it, getting onto the same page. So how do we read something? How do each of you go about reading a play for the first time in order to get what you need from it to hop into table work?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, when I get cast in a Shakespeare play, the thought of just reading the script in the beginning is not always fun.
Oh no.
Because it's really overwhelming. There's gonna be a lot of question marks that I have. So I can do it, obviously. I've trained myself over the years, but like the first few pages of reading the text, you're always like, I'm sorry, what's happening? What are the thine? And then you get into it and you're like, okay, I've adjusted. I now have understood kind of what the text is like.
Right.
And you get the vibe of it.
So you have to kind of give yourself some grace there at the beginning.
Yeah.
You're going into it. We talk in our very colloquial way. We use abbreviations and emojis all day long. We're not used to iambic pentameter, but we got to give ourselves grace and give the text a chance to speak to us.
Guaranteed, you do get into it. Like even at the last production we just did, I talked to so many audience members, and they were like, ooh, at the beginning, but everybody says, it took me a minute, and then I was there. So like when you're feeling that resistance, just pushing through it.
Right, yeah.
Well, that's a big part of what you're reading. Shakespeare's text is meant to be seen by the audience, right? It's not meant to be read. And when you've got trained pros, doing it with emotion and passion and all of those things, and they're seeing the subtext and they're seeing the action and the emotion and put it all together, they get it.
Yeah, and that's much more fun. Even me, I don't necessarily enjoy reading a Shakespeare script, but do I enjoy seeing a Shakespeare play? Yes, it's a totally different experience. And this was not written to be read. It was written to be heard and seen.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. And I think we're getting to the core of, the difference between literature and drama, right?
Yeah, it's not only is it a different type of text, but the text is structured differently in lots of different ways. And Shakespeare's use of soliloquy. In fiction, we have the ability to see people's thoughts, but we don't know what people's thoughts are in theater unless they tell you, and maybe they're not even telling the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's structured in such a way that it is meant to be experienced. And even though we've all read scripts for years and years and years, it is difficult to just sit down and read a script, but to sit down and listen to a script or be part of something that's collaborative is a different experience also.
I think so, and I think there's that makes me think of those lines in Hamlet and other plays where we're going to hear a play.
Right.
They say that it's not about reading, but it's about experiencing.
Right.
Right. So let's get into it here. The way that we're going to structure today, AJ and Sarah are going to portray actors coming to the stage for the first time as if this is their first read of this. Of course, they've studied this and read it before, but today they'll be coming to us as if they're actors reading it for the first time. And Courtney and I are going to sit in, asking questions, posing different thoughts and different situations to the text that they can respond to. So we'll be starting and stopping, and let's get into it.
All right.
This is Act 2, Scene 2 of Macbeth.
That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark, peace. So already we've come out of the iambic pentameter here, and we've got these short lines. Is that something important for us to note as performers?
I think so. So when we're talking about iambic pentameter, we're talking about 10 syllables per line, 5 stressed, 5 unstressed. And so right here we have hark, peace, and then the rest of the line is missing. So what do we think is actually happening there? What is taking up the room of those missing feet?
Yeah, because whenever we have missing feet, that means that we're going to fill that not with sound, not with text, but with some action on stage, right? And so in this particular moment, we look at the words, hark, listen, I hear something, and peace, be quiet, right? So something is happening audibly or emotionally to make Lady Macbeth pause.
Right.
So she's either heard something or she thinks that she's heard something.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, because what's the very next line? And we'll keep going.
All right. It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman. So she heard an owl. It lets us know. Okay, got it, yes. It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman, which gives the sternest good night. He is about it. The doors are, so we've got a new thought here.
Yes.
He is about it. We're not talking about the owl anymore.
And how do we know, if we were just looking through it without even really getting the context, how would we just infer that that's a new thought?
Well, there's some punctuation there.
Yes.
Right. So what we've got here is what we'd call a midline stop. So we've got an ending punctuation right in the middle of a line. It could be a question mark, a period, an exclamation mark. But here we have a period, which gives the sternest good night. Period. Right in the middle of the line, which indicates a big thought shift. And what do you say? He is about it.
He's about it.
And what is it?
It. Oh, the deed.
The deed.
The deed. The stabby. That's right. Yes. So we've gone from the distraction back into, oh, it's happening now.
It's happening.
It's happening right now.
And you say it makes me think of one of the first monologues that Macbeth has. If it were done, when 'tis done, then 'twere well. It were done. So we can't even really get out the word out of our mouth. Murder, the treason, the regicide, which means killing the king.
And it's the people that are doing it that can't even say it. I mean, they're the ones that are committing the act.
It's such a foul act that they
it.
can't even say
Yeah,
it.
and even Lady Macbeth, before this scene, just begs metaphysical aid to just help her to not even see it or feel it.
Yeah.
It is so awful, they themselves don't even want to experience it.
Beautiful. Let's keep going here.
All right. He is about it. The doors are open. And the surfeited grooms. Now, immediately I would have a student ask what that word means right there.
Surfeited grooms. So what is surfeited? What are surfeited grooms?
Right. Well, the grooms are the servants to the king. And she's mentioned before that she's plied them with alcohol. She's given them stuff to drink. So perhaps contextually, is it that they are drunk or they're tired?
Right.
Yeah.
Great. You bring up a wonderful device in order to read these plays.
Right.
Even after doing it for many years, you're not going to know the exact meaning of every single word you come across because it's 2022, right? It's not the 1500s. It's not the 1600s. So we use context clues. Context clues meaning all of the words, all of the information around the word to give you the meaning of that particular word. And so here we see that it may be some tipsy guards.
Right. The doors are open. The surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. So they're supposed to be guarding the king, but they're mocking what they're supposed to be. They're charged with snores. They're asleep. Lots of colons in this.
Yes.
Lots of colons and semicolons. Do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die.
You know, it's like you have to go to the period. Like, you know, like the colons and semicolons, like that's not a stopping point. And you know, when it drops the line, there's not a period there. I think a lot of students will read it. They'll get to the doors are open and the surfeited grooms. That's the end of the line. So I need to put a period there. Nope. You go to the period.
Right. Because a colon or a semicolon tells us something different, right? After a colon, many times we get what?
A list or evidence.
Right. And after a semicolon, especially in this work, we get something different as well.
Yeah, we get, with the semicolon, it's like, this is a thought that adds on to the thought I was just having.
Yes. And so what you're saying, AJ, is perfect. We keep on reading to the period, and that these semicolons and colons actually give us the hills and valleys, the parts that we emphasize and pull back from. So it teaches us, it tells us how to read and feel the rhythm of the text.
Yeah, and when you're reading through it and you're hitting those semicolons and colons and you're having question marks, that's okay. But I think you're right. You have to go all the way to the period and then assess,
what just happened?
What just happened?
Yeah.
What are we talking
That's
about
a very long sentence. It's multiple lines until we have a period, and with tons of semicolons and colons in there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's go back from I have drugged their posits and see what happens.
I have drugged their posits, that death and nature do contend about them whether they live or die. Because their posits also, again, short line. There's
Yes.
nothing there. So something is happening visually, perhaps.
Who's there? What ho?
Alack, I'm afraid they have awaked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, I laid their daggers ready. He could not miss 'em. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it.
Great. So if we do just what we talked about, which you did do, you had a thought change on all of those ending punctuations. You see that the thoughts are happening so quickly. In one line, we get the attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, new thought. I laid their daggers ready. So Shakespeare's showing us that these new thoughts are happening so fast, and that it's a very frantic, and there's lots of trepidation within this scene. Great. Let's go from had he not resembled my father.
Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. My husband.
I have done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise?
I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did you not speak?
When?
Now.
As I descended?
I.
Hark! Who lies in the second chamber?
Malcolm.
Great. So right here we get something called shared lines. And so let's talk, what are shared lines?
So if we're looking at iambic pentameter, where there's 10 syllables, a shared line is when 2 or more characters are sharing those 10 syllables. And does that mean that now we have all this space to relax and have these lines? No, we still only have da-dum, 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 right? So we gotta roll through it quickly, right? Which, again, gives us emotional information about the scene.
So just for, just to play a little bit, let's see what happens if we read these as if they are short lines and very pausy throughout.
Okay.
And see how that feels.
All right.
So right from I heard, let's go from did not you speak?
Did not you speak?
When?
Now.
As I descended?
I.
Hark!
All right. Aside from falling asleep,
Right.
it deflates the urgency of the scene.
Well, yeah, especially in that moment. I mean, murder was just committed.
Right. So let's read it this time, and we're going to pick up on our cues. So picking up your cues means really coming in at the end of your scene partner's line. So we'll pick up our cues and really play these shared lines.
And a note to all student actors, it doesn't mean saying the line faster, right? That happens a lot. I think there's a misconception there. That just means picking up after that.
That space between the lines.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So let's go from that same spot.
Did not you speak?
When?
Now.
As I descended?
I.
Hark! Who lies in the second chamber?
Malcolm.
This is a sorry sight.
Foolish thought to say a sorry sight.
There's one did laugh in sleep, and one cried, murder. That they did wake each other. I stood and heard them. But they did say their prayers and addressed them again to sleep.
There are 2 lodged together.
One cried, God bless us, and amen the other. As they had seen me in these hangmen's hands, listening their fear, I could not say amen. When they did say, God bless us.
Consider it not so deeply.
But wherefore could not I pronounce amen? I had most need of blessing, and amen stuck in my throat.
These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad.
Great, we'll stop here. There's a couple of things I really love here. First is the device of repetition, repeating a word over and over that makes it stronger or gives it more emphasis. So if we look here, what's a word? I see it 4 times in a row here. One cried, God bless us, and amen the other, as they had seen me. I could not say amen. Why couldn't I say amen? Amen stuck in my throat. He keeps saying it over and over again. And it's as if his intensity, his worry, his fear seems to grow with each repetition of the word. Yeah. And so when you get a word that's repeated like that, you kind of have to ask yourself, why is that word repeated? So why do we think amen is repeated over and over here?
Well, I think amen is it's a religious word, and they said God bless us, and I couldn't say that. I couldn't agree to that. I don't know. I guess because he was doing.
I've just broken a commandment.
Right.
I've just been in violation of the religious law here by killing a king. I've committed murder. And I couldn't say it. Does this mean that there's something wrong with me? Am I changed as a person forever because of this?
And not just any old murder. Like the king himself was given his kinghood by God, right? So in a way, you are killing God himself when you kill the king. So are you allowed to even say amen anymore when you kill God?
Right. And I think what Courtney's getting at too is describing that great chain of being, all the way from the Godhead down to the animals and the rats and raccoons that are on the ground, and that the king is even higher on that chain than regular humans. One other thing that I want to point out, these words stuck in my throat, this idea of onomatopoeia, where a word sounds like what it is. And when you think about something stuck in your throat, right? It almost sounds like what the words are describing. And Shakespeare was such a wordsmith that he's definitely going to choose the words that tell the story in the best way.
Yeah, I noticed when I was performing the scene that a lot of Lady Macbeth's lines have a lot of S's. Shh.
Because this is a whispered, hurried conversation. We can't be overheard.
Right. Beautiful, beautiful. I think let's skip ahead. Let's see what happens here at the end of the scene.
Whence is that knocking? How's it with me when every noise appalls me? What hands are here? Ha! They pluck out mine eyes. With all great Neptune's ocean, wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas in incarnadine. What's that word?
So we've got a lot of stuff going on here, right? We've got multitudinous. So let's use some of our context clues. What could we use around that word to say, okay, what might multitudinous mean?
Means a lot.
Multi, right?
Yeah.
Because he's just asked, will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood? That's very vast. It's big. It's
and how many times a day do we use that word?
Multitudinous times.
Yes. I don't know if I've ever used that word in just common conversation.
Right.
But again, he's using it to show that this is a special situation. Multitudinous seas. In incarnadine. So when we're in, so the seas are turning into a different color, making the green one red. The green sea is turning red with all of the blood that is being spilt from this event. Yeah. I think this also shows a little bit of foreshadowing, right? Because what does Lady Macbeth talk about in one of the later scenes regarding blood and washing it away?
Yeah, so she is not seeing reality, but in her distress is afraid that her hands are covered in blood, so much blood that they'll never be clean.
And we have this saying now, that you've got blood on your hands. To me, it's symbolic of you are guilty of this, and it's the guilt coming out just in a visual hallucination, a manifestation of what they really, what they're tormented with.
Yeah, and we have a character here who literally hands are covered in blood, right? And there's one character now with hands covered in blood, but there's about to be another.
So we basically have that concept of my hands covered in blood. We have Shakespeare to thank for that.
I've been caught red-handed.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think it was really interesting in our production, our Macbeth decided to wear gloves after the killing of the king because to not be able to see the blood on the hands is really, really a cool choice. Let's just go to the very end here. Hark, more knocking. Get on your nightgown.
Hark, more knocking. Get on your nightgown, lest occasion call us and show us to be watchers. Be not lost so poorly in your thoughts.
To know my deed, 'twere best not to know myself. Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I would thou couldst.
And what does that last line mean there?
I wish Duncan would wake up. I wish he wouldn't be murdered.
Yeah. So
Immediate
right
regret.
away, we see remorse. You just did it, and already you wish you could undo it.
Well, I mean, he walks out of the door and he says, this is a sorry sight. Like right from the get-go. Wow, this is terrible. What have I done?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So really we get to see not only a story of tragedy, a story of bloodshed and witchcraft, we get to see a story of humanity.
Yeah.
We've all done things in our lives that we regret, that we have remorse for. And through drama, through the act of theater, we get to watch people go through these problems and get to imagine our own self in them vicariously. And that's our road to empathy, understanding, and all of that kind of thing. Great. So we're going to move on to the next scene in just a second.